How do I age well? It's something I often ponder on. My name's Rosaria Barretto, and I want to find out what it takes to live a healthy and happy life as we age. I'm a clinical exercise specialist, and for the past 5 years, I've worked with nearly 1,000 older adults, and as a result, have had the chance to talk to a diverse range of happy and healthy, and not so happy and healthy people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I want to know what it takes to be able to look back and confidently say, I lived an amazing life. Why not join me on this exploration on what it takes to live happily and healthily and learn how to age well? Hello and welcome back to the How to Age Well podcast. Today's episode is all about motivation and how to stay on track. I'm going to cover the psychology of motivation and practical ways that we can get the tasks done that we want to and that we intend to without telling yourself, tomorrow I'll finally do it. So this podcast episode is aimed at supporting you with your aging activities, for example, exercise or healthier food choices and eating, or it could even be doing tasks that are going to promote your health and well-being. So I want to encourage you to think about what are those things that are really difficult right now. Is it exercise? Like, are you really struggling to do that 5-kilometer walk? Are you really struggling to lift some weights? Or is it just as simple as I'm struggling to stand up every hour on the hour and just get better at that rather than staying sedentary and sat for the whole day? Have you ever gone to bed with a burst of motivation telling yourself, tomorrow I'll finally do it, only to wake up the next morning and find yourself right back where you started? It's super frustrating. You've made a promise to yourself, and yet when the time comes, it feels so much harder to follow through than you'd expect. It's not that you don't want to do it. It's just something that stands in the way between the excitement of planning and the reality of execution. And this cycle is all too familiar for many of us, whether it's committing to a fitness routine, working on a personal project, or simply getting organised. The initial excitement can easily fade, leaving us all feeling discouraged. But the great news is that there is a practical way, there are lots of practical ways and mental strategies that we can use to break this cycle, stay motivated, and manage our expectations better. So firstly, why does it happen? I'm going to discuss the psychology behind it. Before diving into solutions, let's really understand why. You've probably heard the phrase, I'm going to do this, countless times. And yet 5 months later, you're still not where you want to be. The psychology of motivation and goal setting plays a huge role in this. And here's what's going on behind the scenes. So number one, immediate rewards versus long-term benefits. Our brains are wired to seek immediate gratification, things that offer quick rewards, like scrolling through social media or watching TV, feel more compelling than long-term goals, even if we know they'll be better for us in the long run. The promise of working towards something bigger can feel abstract, especially when we're faced with an instant comfort of more familiar, less demanding activities. We also experience cognitive dissonance, and this is where there's a gap between our intentions and our actions. Your mind might be telling you, I want to do this, but your body or habits are not aligned with that desire. When there's a disconnect, it can create feelings of frustration and guilt, which only makes it harder to act the next time. I think it's also important to point out that habit stacking and creating healthy habits really links well here. For example, if you're saying you want to do this and you're leaving like 2 or 3 days in between, you're not creating a healthy habit because you're not relating what your desire is to your actual actions. The next thing is overwhelm. Often when we make big promises to ourselves, we're not taking into account the complexity of the task ahead. The sheer size of the goal can leave us feeling overwhelmed, and in response, we avoid taking action. We think, I'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow turns into next week and then next month. And finally, perfectionism and self-doubt. If you expect everything to go perfectly and you fear failure or making mistakes, it can paralyze you before it even begins. This perfectionism can make it feel like you can't do it correctly, right, or in the best way. And it's just not worth doing at all. So there are some practical things that you can do to avoid falling into this trap. Now, we understand why this happens, but let's talk about practical ways to actually follow through. Number one is starting small. One of the biggest barriers to getting started is overwhelm. If you've set a massive goal, it can seem impossible to even know where to begin. Break your task down into small and manageable pieces. For example, instead of committing to an hour at the gym, commit to a 10-minute walk or a short stretching session. The goal isn't to do everything at once, but to make progress no matter how small. A really good example is running. You say to yourself, tomorrow I'm going to run. Now, in this case, you wake up and the day goes on and you don't run. But have you set yourself a specific distance or a specific time? For example, I'm going to run as soon as I wake up in the morning for 10 minutes. If we start small and focus on a specific achievable goal, that will be a lot better. Vague promises like I'm going to be healthier, or I'm going to go and work on my project tomorrow, or I'm going to go to the gym are really easy to ignore. So as long as you're making it specific and measurable, I'll walk for 15 minutes in the morning, or I'll lift weights for 5 minutes, or I'm going to cook my dinner instead of buy my dinner at 6 p.m. are much more concrete goals that are much easier to commit to. Once you accomplish them, you'll feel the momentum and you will start to feel not accomplished, I've already said that. You'll feel the momentum to continue doing the action. Also, make it easy for yourself. Don't make it hard. Going back to the running thing, remove as much friction as possible. If you have decided, right, tomorrow morning, as soon as I wake up, I'm going to go for a run for, let's say, 10 minutes. What can you do to make that action much more achievable? Number one, get your clothes ready the night before when you've got that motivation. They're out on the bed, they're sitting there, they're right in your face. Number two, avoid putting tasks in between the waking up and the action of going for a run. If your activity involves a specific location, decide, I know that I'm going to leave my house, I'm going to run to this point, and then I'm going to run back. Or I'm going to run to this point and I'm going to walk back. Make sure that you've got everything ready to go when you wake up. Doing things in the morning are a lot easier than doing them in the afternoon or the evening. We get carried away with other tasks, and our brains and our mind can play a huge part in devil versus angel. For example, the angel saying, like, I want to do this, it's really good for you, I know that it's really important. And then the devil saying, oh, but you need to go and do this first. Why don't we watch some TV? Oh, let's fold these clothes before I do that. And that it just gets to the end of the day and you just feel mentally exhausted. The less you have to think about it in the morning, the more likely you are to follow through. Also use the 2-minute rule. Commit to doing something just for 2 minutes. This simple trick can help overcome the resistance we feel when it's time to take action. Once you start, you'll often find that you naturally want to continue beyond the 2 minutes. For example, you can promise yourself that you're going to go for a run in the morning and that you'll run for 2 minutes maximum. But by this point, you've got out of the house, you've got dressed, you've done everything necessary. You might as well run for a little bit longer. And then 5, accountability. Now, this is a big thing for me. I find accountability really helps me. And sometimes I really cry out for help when it comes to these things, and I rely heavily on my husband. Sometimes the biggest barrier to action is the lack of accountability. So share it with your friend's family member or colleague who can check in with you. Knowing that someone else is aware of your intentions can help you stay on track. You might even consider finding an accountability person or buddy who has similar goals so that you can both encourage and motivate each other. For example, let's say your partner doesn't want to run with you, but you have a friend who might be interested, or you know that you can listen to a podcast, or you can do something that holds you accountable, that you really, really enjoy, that's going to make sure that you get out, something you're looking forward to. There are also lots of mental strategies that you can use to stay motivated. While practical steps are crucial, mental strategies are just as important in maintaining long-term motivation. And here are some mental shifts that can help you stay focused. Shift your mindset from should to want. Instead of telling yourself, I should do this, try reframing your goals to more positive, empowering mindset. Ask yourself, what's in it for me? Or how will this make me feel? By connecting to your goals on a deeper level, your motivations and your values, you'll be able to follow through in a much easier way. It will feel a lot simpler. You can also visualize the end result. I'm a big visualization person, or I use it a lot in my day to day. And visualizing success can really help create a sense of excitement and purpose. When you picture yourself and how great you feel and how great you look, those red cheeks and your sweaty hair after that 10-minute run, after completing a task or achieving your goal, you can really tap into the emotional side of motivation. Try taking a moment every day to imagine what success looks like and feels like for you. How you feel afterwards. You'll feel really just accomplished and happy that you've managed to do this big, big task that you've been building up in your head for so long. This will help bridge the gap between your present self and your future self, motivating you to act in the present. Reframing failure is also a really important way of changing your mindset. Let's say you miss a day or you slip up on a goal or a set task you wanted to achieve. Don't see it as a failure. Instead, reframe it as a learning experience. Ask yourself, what got in the way and what can I do differently next time? This shift helps reduce the guilt and frustration that often causes us to give up entirely. Going back to my running situation. You've got your shoes out, you've got your clothes out, you've done everything possible to get out in the morning, and you still haven't done it. What's got you in the way? All you've said to yourself is you have to run for 2 minutes, and leaving that front door seems impossible. What can you do differently next time? Can you see if you can meet someone at the end of your run? Or can you download a podcast the night before that you're really excited to listen to? Or can you give yourself a reward once it's done that really excites you? Maybe buying new trainers to do it will help. Doesn't always work. I know a lot of people who buy things and never use them, but just find what really works for you. And also ask yourself, what got in the way? Did you get distracted by something? Did you prioritize other tasks, for example, cleaning the kitchen or meeting up with a friend? Okay, next time I have to say to my friend, I actually can't do that time, but I can do 10 minutes later because I have to do my run in the morning. Or maybe ask them to join you. And make a habit of it. Consistency is absolutely key to long-term motivation. It's not just about doing everything perfectly, but doing it regularly. The more you make your goal a daily or weekly habit, the less you'll need motivation to get started. It becomes ingrained in your routine and doesn't require as much mental energy to do. So since being pregnant, I have found it hard to go to the gym. However, I still go at least 2 times a week. And I know a lot of people who haven't been able to go at all. And for me, the reason I do that is because I've made such a habit out of it over the last few years, is that I cannot go throughout my week without doing any exercise. Managing expectations and being realistic with yourself is going to help you succeed in the long term. One of the reasons we struggle with motivation is that we often set ourselves up for failure by having unrealistic expectations. We can manage these better by understanding that progress does take time and being patient. Success doesn't happen overnight, and neither does change. It takes time to build momentum, whether you're training for a marathon or launching a new gardening project. Be patient with yourself and acknowledge that small steps are just as important as big leaps. Even just spending 5 minutes a day on something is better than spending an hour once. Focus on effort, not perfection. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that we need to be perfect from the start. However, this can often lead to burnout and discouragement. So focus on doing your best in that moment rather than striving for perfection. This is really important for that long-term success. So you're showing up consistently even when things are not perfect. And reevaluate your goals periodically. Over time, your priorities and your circumstances might change. If a goal no longer feels relevant or exciting, it's okay to reevaluate and adjust. The key is to stay aligned with what truly matters to you. So motivation can be really tricky. It can be tricky to manage, especially when you're faced with the gap between your intentions and your actions. But by understanding the psychology behind why we sometimes don't follow through, you can adopt practical strategies and mental shifts that will help you stay on track. Remember, success doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency, patience, and a realistic approach to your goals. So the next time you feel motivated the night before, make sure you're setting yourself up for success by breaking things down into smaller, manageable steps. It's not about how quickly you achieve your goal, but about keeping up momentum. Keep going day by day. And when you inevitably face setbacks, simply regroup, reframe, and keep moving forward. Your future self will thank you so much for it, especially in your 80s, 90s, and 100s. My name's Rosaria Barretto, and thank you so much for listening to How to Age Well. If you enjoyed the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback means so much and helps others to find out about how to age well.